Political parties are reacting to the increase in power price, with some blaming it on the culture of non-payment. Freedom Front Plus MP Wouter Wessels says this directly contributes to the exorbitant tariff hikes. For more on this, he joins us. Mr. Wessels, very good afternoon. Appreciate your time today. Now, obviously, raising some issues around President Cyril Ramaphosa wanting to write off that date. What are your thoughts?
Well, it started with Premier Lesotho last year calling for debt in ESKOM to be written off. I then in Parliament at the end of last year of the parliamentary term asked the question to President Ramaphosa. His response was that they will consider it. I mean, he now reaffirmed that during this last week, saying that it is something to be considered under certain circumstances. Fact of the matter is we are facing an energy crisis. The power utility is in a terrible financial state. It can't afford any outstanding debt to it. Government has already taken aboard certain of ESKOM's credits, certain of its outstanding loans, and it can't actually, the fiscus can't afford that. And at the end of the day, ordinary citizens are the biggest losers in this, that we are facing terrible load shedding, we are facing terrible power increases, power hikes, and businesses are suffering, people are losing their jobs and their livelihoods. And this cannot continue. And in light thereof, to even talk about writing off debt of ESKOM, of Soweto for the how many at time, and the amount of money that's still outstanding, that is completely ludicrous and not contributing to solving the power utilities situation and the energy crisis in South Africa.
Mr. Wessels, there's a plethora of issues that we can discuss around power, around non-payment and potential solutions, and whether government has those solutions or not. But let's touch on non-payment by not just people in Soweto, but across the country. In a conversation I had earlier on, municipalities across the country are owed over 300 billion rand. Now, how do you envision that money can be collected?
It's a terrible situation, and there's a lot of people that cannot afford to pay it. There's a lot of people that should be on indigent registers, that should receive basic electricity and basic water supply as provided for in indigent policies of municipalities. At this stage where they can't afford a running bill with a municipality with unlimited electricity and unlimited water. Unfortunately, those indigent registers are not kept up to date. A lot of people are on there that should actually afford and does afford. They have salaries they can afford to pay for their own services. Those that can't aren't on those registers, and that should be addressed. And then you can't have someone that should be on the indigent register that can't afford to run up a bill for electricity that's at the end of the day without any intervention, putting that person in an inhumane position to now have to pay a bill that he shouldn't have been allowed to run up in the first place. We have dire financial and economic circumstances in South Africa. We have a lot of poverty, but we need to get the economy going to get people out of that situation. But at the end of the day, we need electricity, and we can't afford now to write off debt to put ESKOM in a worse position, and by doing that, have power increases, power hikes, businesses that close, and more unemployment, more poverty. That is a vicious circle. It's not actually addressing the issue to now write off debt of people that shouldn't in the first place have had those bills run up. So that should be addressed. And then municipal debt, there's a lot of solutions to that because it's both ways. There's a lot of outstanding debt from ESKOM to municipalities as well. There's a lot of municipalities that are being penalized because they are providing more electricity than they are allowed to in terms of their NMD, their Notified Minimum Demand Agreements with ESKOM. Those agreements were negotiated in 2003. There's a lot more people there's a lot more people using electricity that has the benefits of electricity. Now municipalities are penalized because they did what they should have done and providing electricity. So those type of issues should be addressed, and we should start to then have a situation where people pay for what they use, municipalities pay over what they collect, and obviously there's a lot more that should be done to actually solve the financial position at ESKOM and get better management, better financial management, and privatization of a lot of our power supply to get the country out of this crisis that's affecting all of us.
Mr. Wessels, the problem with load shedding has been with us since, I think, as far back as 2008. So we're talking about 15 years. You've been a parliamentarian for the last 5 years, representing a constituent whom I'm sure would have raised issues around electricity and energy supply. What conversations have you been having in Parliament as a representative of these individuals about dealing with these issues over the last 5 years?
Well, I've been a member of public representative for the last 10 years. I was a member of provincial legislature where we addressed the issue of the outstanding debt to ESKOM of municipalities. And at that stage already, we proposed a lot of solutions to that. And in Parliament for the last 5 years, almost 5 years, we've been proposing the fact that there should be a defragmentation of the whole power utility. At this stage, if you look at the problems facing ESKOM, it's because it's been allowed that ESKOM was mismanaged for so many years. We know what happened with state capture. We know all the tenders. We know what happens with Kusile, Medupi, all those inflated prices, the tenders that were awarded, money that has been looted, a lot of criminality at the power utility. To now solve it is to break it up in smaller utilities, privatize a lot of it, rather get money, capital to invest in infrastructure. Because one of our big problems is not only power supply, we have a lot of...
Sorry, Mr. Wessels, please allow me to come in there. There is a school of thought that suggests that this whole debacle with ESKOM is really to get ESKOM privatized. So would privatization not feed into the hands of the few that have been pushing for this agenda all along, as opposed to for you as members of Parliament and others to put pressure on government to fix the problem with ESKOM?
It's not fixable at this stage. It's not fixable because you have power stations that are completely depleted, that cannot generate enough power. We don't have the capacity to generate enough power and energy for South Africa. And we don't have money to invest and to upgrade those power utilities. That being said, on the one hand, on the other hand, we are also at this stage being irresponsible to close down certain power stations due to the Paris Agreement before we actually should. Whilst we have this energy crisis, we should keep those power utilities and power stations going so that we generate power regardless of it being coal power stations. Fact of the matter is we don't have enough money to invest in the grid because it's not only, as I said, the power supply side, it's also the network, the grid. You can say that government must invest in renewable energy, more wind energy, more sun energy, all of that. We have certain plants. Let me tell you, the shocking thing is that a minimum, even nothing, of those wind energy that's generated is going into the grid because the grid can't accommodate it. So we need money. The fiscus is depleted. Government does not have money. ESKOM does not have money. Its outstanding debt to its creditors is astounding. Its financial position, it's bankrupt. It's basically bankrupt. So what is the solution here? Is to get capital and to get more privatized power supply and networks so that we defragmentize and deregulate a lot of it so that there's competition as well and so that there's power supply. I know the ideology and the narrative of big business and people trying to manipulate this. At the end of the day, if you go and look at the reality, we are at a situation where we are going to have a total blackout during this year if there's no now, in the short term, solutions that's going to come in terms of infrastructure development of the power network. Otherwise, there's no solution. You can say that government should provide some kind of solution. There's no solution. The solution is money, and we don't have money. The fiscus doesn't have money. ESKOM doesn't have money. Private business does have money. Let's try to get private business on board. Let's privatize so that it's to the benefit of all South Africans. Because without electricity, we also don't have water. There's a lot of towns at the moment without water due to the regular load shedding, due to load reduction, due to power failures, because load shedding causes a lot more damage to the power network. It's a vicious circle. The more load shedding there is, the less power capacity we have, because it's not designed. No power network is designed to be switched off twice or thrice a day. It can't hold it. It's going to collapse completely. So we need more power. How do we get that? We need to open up the network, get independent power suppliers on board, but it can't be here or there and a few megawatts that's privately produced, because once again, the network can't handle it, so there must be investment in the network as well. And that's where the solution lies. We should leave ideology out of this and get a solution. And unfortunately, it's going to be an unpopular solution to a lot of politicians that's against privatization.
Mr. Wessels, final question. A number of political parties have jumped onto the bandwagon to say, you know what, we need to take to the streets, enough is enough. What is the position of Freedom Front Plus around this very story, around obviously that 18.65% tariff increase which comes into effect in a few months?
Well, it's completely unacceptable that Nersa approved that power hike. It's going to completely destroy the economy. At the other end, we don't have a solution with regards to ESKOM's financial position. We shouldn't be populistic at this stage, run in the streets and say that that's going to provide a solution. We will need a practical solution, and that at the end of the day, and this is also not a popular statement maybe, but our solution lies with a more responsible government. The ANC, with all due respect, allowed ESKOM to be mismanaged for many, many years. You mentioned we started with load shedding in 2008. The problem was never addressed, and the looting continued, the mismanagement, the irregular expenditure, the fruitless and wasteful expenditure just continued up until such an extent that it's now completely ruined. Now, then we need a new government in 2024 to take over and to start doing the unpopular and getting business back on track, getting ESKOM back on track, getting power supply back on track. So that's where the solution lies. That's what Freedom Front Plus is saying. But we shouldn't be populist and run in the streets and think that will bring a solution. We need practical solutions, and we're doing our work in the portfolio committees, in Parliament, and trying to get a solution so that at the end of the day we restore dignity to the people of South Africa, that they can have jobs, that the economy can get going, and that people can get out of poverty. And that's where we should be. That should be all of us' mission at this stage.
Mr. Wessels, appreciate your time. I certainly look forward to some of those results from the work that you're doing in the parliamentary portfolio committees. Wouter Wessels, MP from the Freedom Front Plus.